Hello and welcome back to our Uncontested Investing studio. I'm your host, Nate Zielinski, joined by co-host Suzanne Andreessen. We're going to continue our series on property types and niches. And today's episode is going to be all about mobile home parks, an underrated aspect sometimes of the investment community, potentially a hidden gem for a lot of investors. What are your initial thoughts on the mobile home park situation, Suzanne?
So I think it's a solution to a division of the population that may be on fixed income or low income, but that by no means makes it a location without pride.
Yes, exactly. I think the affordable housing aspect of mobile home parks is something that's always going to make it a viable option for investors, right? You have so many possible tenants. Demand for affordable housing is at an all-time high. And if you can make that community and have that sense of pride that Suzanne was talking about, mobile home parks are a very desirable location to live in a lot of different parts across the country. I think that's another aspect of it. It's not segmented to one region, one side, one coast in the country. You can find mobile home parks in all 50 states.
Absolutely. And I think there's a tremendous amount of mobile home parks in the South and in Florida. You see that as a vacation strategy for folks. There are certainly mobile home parks up in Maine, but you have to make sure that you've got proper insulation so that you've got, they're there, but you have to make sure that they provide a way to properly heat them as well.
Yep. And I think they're in high demand right now, as we talked about, with the affordable housing they can provide, but there is a little bit of a lower supply. So new zoning laws are making parks harder and harder to create, but the ones that are in existence are very valuable options. So if you as an investor can locate one or some of those mobile home parks, bring them into your portfolio, the scarcity in which the newer ones are being built means less competition, more people using your mobile home park as the viable option for affordable housing in the area.
And I think there's, you think of your mobile home park, and it's either a single wide or a double wide. And I think there's a little bit more to that. Yes, that's traditionally the mobile home, but now we've all heard about tiny homes.
Yes.
And that you could take a mobile home park that has now, as you convert those from a single or double wide, you can have a tiny home put there. We about a year and a half ago, we had the University of Maine on the cover story of the magazine where they 3D printed a home in 6 days. So you start looking at how you can now almost convert a mobile home park to a unique property, that each asset in there has a different look and feel that complements the pride of the resident living there.
Yeah, you can have different sectors or neighborhoods within your mobile home park. And we talked about affordable housing at the beginning, but I think sustainable housing is something that's becoming more and more popular, right? With the introduction of tiny homes, you'd be surprised how many people actually want to live in a tiny home because what it can do for the environment, the less footprint they can leave behind. People are really getting behind that movement. So if you can find a way to intertwine that into your mobile home park, that's a huge win for an investor.
Absolutely. And it truly does provide a uniqueness that each person can really reflect on how they want to live. And I think that is a great way to provide housing, at various rates of pricing.
Yep. And with the affordable housing, that leads to mobile home parks offering a strong and stable cash flow for investors. And you think, affordable housing and strong cash flow, how can those two interact? But with the sheer volume that you can have in a mobile home park, there's less turnover as well. People are typically owning their home and just renting out the lot within your mobile home park. So I think that's an important point of education for investors that are unaware. But with that low maintenance and low turnover, that cash flow can stay steady for years to come at a mobile home park.
Well, so they're renting the pad, and they're putting their house on there, and again, it's either a single wide pad or a double wide pad. But some of the things that if you want to give back to that community, make sure you have some amenities included in that. If you want to make this a successful endeavor where, I've seen some mobile homes that have pools, and swing sets and places for kids to play, and even gardens where you have a community garden. So there's a lot that can be done to really take the stigma of this and make it really a community versus a mobile home.
Yeah, and you're so right. That's part of the battle when you're investing in a mobile home park is combating that stigma. But if you can turn your park into a gem, really the only opinion that matters is the tenants that live in the mobile home park, right? If they have a sense of pride and a sense of community, then you're all set. You've won the battle as an investor. It doesn't matter about any other outside opinion. And I think the consistent cash flow is important to come back to as it relates to a mobile home park, because it really can be recession proof, right? Because if you're starting at a baseline of affordable housing, the market really doesn't impact you as much as it would for somebody who's spending thousands and thousands of dollars on rent or a mortgage every month. The mobile home park tenant is more equipped to continue to pay that lower rent that they entered the park at.
And while they own the asset, the just the structure itself, you can, I don't want to say easily upgrade, but you can swap one out for another where you decide to upgrade your home to another single or double wide unit. And a lot of the residents, significant portion of the residents are elderly units, 70% or more of that. So they're on fixed income. And so that's one thing is, providing the fixed income. And I think some of the struggles that a lot of the towns have in having a mobile home park is, if the elderly folks aren't having kids, and at least I don't think they are at this point. But if you have a 700 unit mobile home park or a 500 unit mobile home park, and all of a sudden you've got 100 kids that enter into a school district, that's a problem. The school has to find a way and accommodate. You're required to educate kids through 12th grade. That can be a burden to a community overnight, literally.
Yep.
And so if you've got, and I don't know if there's a way to have restricted age communities in mobile home parks, or a section of them designated to 55 and older, you can minimize the burden on the town and still have a very successful park.
It adds a layer of protection
for
both parties. So as you can see, there's a lot to uncover, lots of perks as it pertains to mobile home parks. We can't wait to discuss more of those on the other side of the break. We'll see you soon on this week's episode of Uncontested Investing.
See you soon. REI Inc. is the premier monthly publication for real estate investors. Dive into a wealth of expert insight and strategies from industry leaders and gain valuable regional market insights, ensuring you always have the best information at your fingertips. Visit rei-ink.com to elevate your real estate investment game today.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Uncontested Investing. Suzanne and I are going to continue to discuss mobile home parks and why they're an attractive property type and niche for investors to start investing in. And one of the investors' favorite topics, I imagine, has to be low operating expenses. The higher net operating income that an investor can yield if they invest in a mobile home park is awesome. And Suzanne, can you tell us why?
Well, so that you're not responsible for a lot of the elements. It's really the groundwork. What's tied to the groundwork. And you want to make sure, your water, your sewer are all operating properly, but really the insurance of the structure, the structure itself are all in the tenant, and as the landlord, you have the opportunity to invest, in the park itself as a whole, maybe, where you don't have a leaky toilet, but you want to make sure that everyone's, hoses are operational in the spring if they have their little gardens and stuff. So it's all tied to, really the infrastructure and not the units themselves.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, right? The no leaky toilets, no HVAC, no AC issues to fix, no broken appliances. So it really takes the onus off of the investor to kind of have that landlord responsibility, and they can then spend their energy elsewhere. And one of the biggest things that can prevent is disputes with your tenants, right? If you're not in the unit fixing things, charging them for broken things, that can dispel a lot of potential arguments, and segue perfectly into our next topic, which is the lower tenant turnover, right? At a mobile home park, there's an opportunity to keep a tenant for years to even decades at a time, right? These people are used to this style of living. It's comfortable. It's what they know. And not to mention, moving a mobile home park to a different location can cost thousands. So if you have a mobile home park in place where, you're renting out maybe 70 to 75% of the lot, and you only want to increase it over time, you're putting yourself in a great place, because a lot of people do not want to move due to the hassle and the stress that can cause.
Well, and they're accustomed to living in that environment. You have a close proximity to your neighbors, but you also have a pride in the environment.
Yeah.
And they collaborate. Where a community garden, or maybe they have a pool, or there's a playground for the kids. Certainly, it allows while you don't have the footprint of a backyard, you do have the whole community to engage in.
Yeah, living area. Tight-knit communities is a big thing, right? You see that in affluent neighborhoods. You see that in city apartments, and you can see that certainly in mobile home parks, right? People that love the style of living that a mobile home park can offer can only lead to longevity as it pertains to them being a tenant and paying you rent, most importantly.
But there's a piece that I think people need to be very conscious of. I know it's happening in Maine. I presume it's happening in other states. Both Brunswick and Bangor, Maine, there were two mobile home parks that were purchased by the residents. And the state of Maine requires a 60-day time frame from the time the property is put on the market when the landlord decides to sell the parcel, that it gives those folks the first right to buy that back and get their funding. And again, it falls back onto the pride of the community.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to own what they've had. They've been there, like you said,
Yep.
for sometimes multiple decades.
Yep.
And I think it's the right thing to do because they're worried about someone coming in from out of state and just, status quo.
Yeah.
And status quo doesn't really work for everything. So I think this is a great way to, if you're going to do it right, and then maybe, the tenants aren't going to want to buy it because you've operated it properly.
Exactly.
And you've really given back to the community but still have a significant cap rate at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's important for the tenants of the mobile home park to hear, that they have that opportunity, that 60-day window. And one thing that affordable living offers tenants of mobile home parks is maybe some extra cash that they can then use on investment properties, right? So I think not only in the mobile home park itself, but beyond, maybe residents or tenants of a mobile home park can look more into that and enter into the investment space themselves. The last thing as we want to discuss on this topic as it pertains back to the investor and what they can do and take advantage of in a mobile home park is the value add potential, right? As we've talked about, this is affordable housing. It's kind of a concept that's fallen under the radar. What an investor can do if they find a mobile home park that's potentially dilapidated, not taken care of by the previous owner. Sometimes these owners of these mobile home parks are moved on to greener pastures, right? They don't worry about the hassle because it's kind of a set it and forget it type of investment property at a mobile home park. But if you're coming in young with that energy and you can turn an investment or a mobile home park on its head, newer roads, landscaping,
Playgrounds.
Exactly.
Anything that's going to make the community feel more loved.
Yeah. Yep.
Where you're giving back, it's you can still have a significant cap rate.
Yep.
But I think it's over longevity and harmonious in the neighborhood, and the harmony from that perspective is reinvest some of the money into the community, because I think they'll find the benefit and make it more valuable to you in the long run.
Exactly.
If you choose to sell it and you've got 90% of your tenants are really satisfied with that, I think you have a much more valuable asset.
Yep, the value can skyrocket in terms of you reselling the property, as Suzanne mentioned, and it can also lead to you charging higher rents, right? A lot of times people will get charged higher rent just for living in the same property year over year, or there's amenities or advantages that they don't get to see or take advantage of. But if you're actually providing value and showing that you're invested in a mobile home park, I don't think you'll get much pushback from the tenants, right? If you're raising rent, but you're making where they live a better place, obviously you have to be very careful. As we've talked about, the affordable housing aspect of mobile home parks is why it's so appealing to some people. So you can't stray too far away from that and kind of take away what they're used to, but there is that delicate balance. And if investor gets it right, they're setting themselves up for years and decades of success.
And there's a negative stigma attached to this community, which I don't think is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's low income or Section 8 does not mean they don't have pride in where they're living. And some investors are very comfortable in a Section 8 environment, which guarantees your payments. So not only can you have a decent cap rate, but a guaranteed income at that as well. There's a lot of ways that you can take a mobile home park and really make it a very positive investment strategy.
Yep. The hidden gem of the real estate investment community. The mobile home park is out there for investors to take advantage of. Something to consider. I hope Suzanne and I provided you with plenty of insight to really appeal to investing in this type of property. There are plenty of mobile home parks across the country just waiting for an investor to take advantage of. Suzanne, any closing thoughts?
Don't be afraid to give it a shot. I think it's, everyone's like, oh, mobile home. I think it's actually a very positive opportunity to really have a significant value.
With that, we will see you guys on the next week's episode of Uncontested Investing. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on these videos. Share it with other investors in the community. Growing this community is extremely important to Suzanne and I. So with that, we'll see you next time on Uncontested Investing.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook, and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.